There's a distance between us. It's getting hard to reach out. Haven't seen you in seasons, but all I hear is your voice. I know my limits, you can break me down, but I'll stay till the finish line. And I've been counting minutes for quite some time now, just to see you again. And I've been counting days to get away, to see you again, see you again. Been fighting ways to get away, to see you again, see you again. We got millions of reasons to let it all go. Hope we're not too broken. I know I'm not always strong, and I've been counting days to get away, to see you again, been fighting ways to get away, to see you again, see you again. Town, I'm searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare. Just stare, cause the flames will burn us. I thought you were the one for me, that's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. Kiss your head when you cried for me. Hold your hand while the pain was over. Keep you warm by the roaring sea. You meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Like shadows in the atmosphere, charting the stratosphere. Yeah. I prayed for you and kept you near, in hopes you'd chase away my fears. I'm on my own, you made it so, and now I'm chasing nightmares too. I used to run with you through the great big leaves, laugh at you when you laugh at me. Hope for us because I believe the home was wanna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, you did not know. Oh. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me.
Ooh, we are live on Twitch now. Yay! Hello world.
Yay, for like the 30th time or so.
Wait, why did you go so low?
No, I don't know.
Wait. What's happening? I can barely hear you anymore. Speak now.
Okay. Well,
Okay, much better.
technical difficulties is what we do.
Okay, it's a lot better now. Lot better now.
All right, good.
Good morning, chat. Hello, people. Hello, world. How are we doing today? Um, Today we're gonna talk about ESL Road to Rio CS:GO, and we're gonna talk about betting, and that's fun.
Of course, it's fun. I'm actually looking forward to today. Usually, betting gets some attention always when we talk about different tournaments and different games and so on. But today we'll deep dive, and also since our betting Twitter is it's been fairly active lately, and we had some people over there. I hope some of them are watching. I think it's a good opportunity to basically pick our brains a little bit. Like, when we put up betting tips, we usually have an explanation why and so on. But today we'll obviously go a little bit more in depth, and it should get kind of obvious how much work we actually put in to our betting tips usually, because it might seem, very, it's one tweet, and it's not much text, but usually there's a lot of thinking behind it. So today we'll deep dive.
Yeah, and actually, I really like that you brought it up here in the beginning. All the kind of background work that goes on for a betting tip to happen. Um, so I'll just put the matches on the of the day to the screen here. We are skipping the South American games because those teams are really unknown to us, so it doesn't really make sense to start doing all the necessary background work to get to know those teams in the first place and then to evaluate whether there's good betting tips. So we're sticking with the teams that we know, hence why we're talking about NA and EU. Um,
Yep.
so let's start with the EU games of the day. We have Complexity going against Astralis, ENS versus Fnatic, and Team Vitality versus Ninjas in Pyjamas. Which one would you like to start with?
Well, I made a small sheet here for me to
Small
remember
sheet.
what I'm talking about. Yeah, so we can start with Complexity Astralis. And just to mention, overall about these games today, we have the first or two of the games in EU has a massive favorite, and one of them is Astralis that we'll begin with here. So I think it's always quite interesting when you have a team being this big of a favorite. I mean, Astralis are anywhere around, I've seen 1.12 to 1.2 pretty much. And in terms of, esports and CSGO in particular, that's really, really massive. You don't often see this big of a favorite in a best of three series. It's and with that said, I think it's not deserved. I don't think Astralis should be anywhere close to a 1.12 favorite. 1.2 we can start discussing, but looking at it, I mean, Astralis has improved lately. I think it's very fair to say in ESL Pro League they had a good performance, but they also fell quite hard against Mousesports in the semifinal, and they have really shown a lot of cases where they crackle. It's not the old Astralis that is just super solid. It's definitely not. And I think also, just to mention, Complexity and Astralis actually played against each other. It's about 2 months ago now, so I don't know how relevant I want that to be. But Complexity actually won 2-0 that time, and that was basically what started the run that Complexity has been on, because they have been on an actually very, very good run since. And of course, they are not Astralis, they are not Astralis level, but I do think that they have a fair shot on making this series at least somewhat close, closer than a 1.12 odds would suggest, at least. Well, how do you feel?
Um, I've been on the other side of Complexity a little bit. I haven't been as impressed. But I do see the point in here. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind when I look at this matchup is that yes, last time they played, Complexity won 2-0, and it feels like I can't really still take it in account. And
No. I mean, I agree with that. It's 2 months ago. Astralis actually had a pretty bad period back then, and Complexity also overperformed like crazy. They won 2 series. I can't remember the other team, but it was a tier 1 team, and it of course, you can't always look at a result, especially this far back, and say that has any impact on today's game, because it really.
yeah, I mean, looking at Complexity, when they played, I'm just going back to see. Yeah, DreamHack Open Anaheim. They lost to Furia in the playoffs, or was it even final? Uh, 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 uh. Results. Yeah, it was the semifinal. Then yeah, they 2-0'd Sprout and Godsend in the minor qualifier for Rio. And yeah, EPL. I don't know. Yeah, it's clear that Complexity is the favorite here. What am I saying? Underdog in here.
Yeah.
Complexity is the clear favorite. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. So it's clear that Australia is the favorite, but 1.12 odds for Australis against a, you can say, tier 1 team or tier 1.5
Well,
team. It's just too much. I mean, 1.2, 1.25, that would be justified. So, and then having like up to 6 times the money for Complexity's win almost, it's, or
well,
5.5 even.
so I want to point like one thing out here for an example. Complexity in the last 5 series, they have won 2 of them against North and Big, which is okay. They are definitely not Astralis level. But the games they have lost, they took one map of Navi, they took one map of Force, and then they lost to Fnatic. And Fnatic is right now maybe the best team in the world. So I think it's interesting that Complexity does really well in most of the time in making series competitive, even against tier 1 teams. And I don't believe they will win against Astralis. That's not what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
then I think, since we do agree that there's not especially much value in Astralis winning, and I don't think likewise that there's not that much value in betting on Complexity winning, let's say 4 or 5 times the money, which you can find, which is, I think that would be a better bet for what it's worth than 1.12 on Astralis. But then we need to start looking at, basically, if we want to find something interesting from this matchup, I think we have to look at alternative, betting lines, which brings us to the map picks for me. And the first map pick will go to Complexity, as far as I understand, which is very, very important to look at, because Complexity has been good on their own maps that they practice harder than the others, and that will be their best chance to obviously take some sort of advantage in this map. I don't necessarily think they will win the map, and I don't think the odds are great for that either. But I did get kind of curious with handicap lines. For an example, you can get plus 5.5 rounds for Complexity on the first map for 1.83 on Bet365. I think that's okay. That would mean that they need to get 11 rounds, which Honestly, most of the time, even against these tier 1 teams, they do, which is pretty good. However, I do think it's a better bet to go with total rounds on Pinnacle, and I'm really curious about these ones because you can get over 26.5 rounds, meaning that you need to get a 16-11 score or more, like 16-12, 16-13, whatever, and that's at 2.19, and I think that's actually pretty good. This is on Pinnacle, by the way, so more than double the money that Complexity, and I want to say this is about Complexity getting 11 rounds, not Astralis. I don't think that's very realistic that Complexity will smash them. So I think personally, getting a 16-11 or better, or more rounds, I mean, for 2.19 is actually pretty good. And this is something I will probably tweet out. But there is, in my opinion, maybe a better option in playing over 24.5, meaning you would need 16.9 either way for 1.59. I think that's really good, especially on Complexity's map pick. I don't see them getting steamrolled on their own map pick. You know?
I'm actually looking at some data here. So I'm looking at Complexity versus the tier 1 teams in EPL, the ones that they lost. Against Navi, maps are 16-14 for Complexity, 16-8 to Navi, 16-12 to Navi. Then against Big, they lost 16-9 and then won 6. Against Fnatic, they got 9 and 6 round. I'm just trying to kind of get a feeling on how many rounds they'll be getting when they'll be
I mean, that's
losing.
fine.
And so just yeah, it makes sense because even though they're not winning, they're still getting a lot of rounds against the tier 1 teams.
Yeah, and I think the important part here, and this is like crucial, if this was speaking about Astralis's pick, I would not be confident at all because I think they can get absolutely smashed on one map, but that will most likely be Astralis's pick. And on their own pick, I'm pretty confident that Complexity will at least put up a good fight and maybe even win. I'm not saying them winning one map here is definitely not out of reach, but I do like these lines. Way more. Like for an example, usually people ask, who's gonna win the game, right? And a lot of times when it comes to betting, that's not, the best option.
Yeah.
And I think here that's the case. I can't find anything that I think I can't see a betting operator here being incorrect in their odds lines. Not incorrect enough for me to find value in it. And I think the best we can find here is probably the over 24.5 rounds in map 1. I think that's actually really good because 159 is, as much as it's not great, it only requires one team to get 9 rounds. The losing side should get 9 rounds. And I really believe that the losing side will be Complexity, but they will put up a fight. So I do like this.
Yeah, we have an interesting question in the chat. So the Wizard of Odds says the following: what do you say about the Complexity relying on the Krieg heavier than Astralis? Will Oboe even be able to play with other weapons?
Hey, it's a good question. I do think it's a relevant one as well. Astralis was obviously one of the teams that didn't rely on Kriegs. Like, basically, as much as I know, their logic was not giving away Kriegs to the CT sides, which, hey, that's fair. I don't really think, I think I've seen enough of this team before the Krieg meta was super relevant. And maybe this is a very good point to bring up. I'm maybe underestimating it, honestly. But I do think that also, in general, people overestimate the impact of the Krieg getting nerfed. These players are too good to not be able to, at all play with AKs. And also, I really feel that Complexity, in my mind, is a team that really relies on team play. That's their strength, and therefore, I don't think it will impact it enough. And also, I don't think that Astralis will gain as much as people think by this either. Let's take another example. Like people say, Brollan is one of the guys who benefited from the Krieg a lot, and honestly, I don't think that's fair. Brollan is a very, very skilled player, for an example, and he will adjust very quickly. I don't think those players, people make it out to be a little bit more than it is. But I'm just putting it out there. Maybe I'm also underestimating it actually. But it's going to be interesting to see. I just don't think it is impactful enough for this game and these odds.
And actually, funny enough, I'm now looking at Obo's profile. His number one weapon is AK, second M4A1, and Krieg was the third. So he's actually played more with M4 than Krieg.
Is
And
that
AK.
statistics from like the last few months though, or is
Yeah,
that in?
this
Okay.
is. Oh, actually, this is all time. Whoops.
Yeah, I was pretty sure it might be the case.
Yeah, last 3 months. 37% Krieg. Right. Yeah, my bad. Oops. Whoopsie daisy. But yeah, I mean,
So, for an example, let me just, because I think this is a very interesting point and it's a very good question. So, I think teams that rely more on their individuals will get hurt more than teams who rely on team play. And I think really Complexity is a very fundamental good team. Let's, for an example, switch to looking at Navi. I think Navi might be hurt more in the short term than other teams because they rely, at least in my opinion, more on skill. Especially Electronic, in my opinion, is one of the best Krieg players in the world, and they are the type of team that might get hurt in the short run. I'm really sure in a month, maybe two, it doesn't really matter anymore. But maybe the first few weeks at least.
all right.
So I do like the question is really really good and something that you should pay attention to for sure.
Okay. So now we've been talking quite a lot about Complexity and Astralis. Should we move to the next game of the day?
For sure, that got way longer than I was planning on, but I think it's an interesting matchup, especially since there's such a big favorite in it.
Yeah, of course, and I mean we don't have to stop at one. We can extend if we need to extend. There's not going to be any Fortnite Giaco 92. Please go overcook your pasta or something. I know you're Italian. Ens versus Fnatic. Yesterday morning we were speculating about this Yumpy thing, and then during the afternoon we got the confirmation. I would like to start with asking about your thoughts about this, Janne.
Well, since we did discuss it a bit yesterday, I'll keep it short. But look, I think Jumpy is an amazing player. I really think that he has a bright future if he can play in majors, that is. But in ends, I'm not so sure right now. It's going to be a very interesting situation. Obviously, with X7 being kind of on the bench, kind of not, and I don't know how that will work out. I don't really like it in general. Also, I'm not a big fan of Yumpy joining a team and not being the main AWPer, if that's how it's actually going to be, which it sounds like. I really feel like when you bring in a player who's an amazing AWPer, let him be the fucking AWPer, okay? Like, I think this happened with Simple in the past as well. And I understand. Like, I was one of the people, probably as well, who looked at it like Simple is amazing on every weapon, you know? So it should be fine. But it wasn't fine. Like, when you have an amazing AWPer, he has to AWP. That's just how it goes. And I am not a fan of bringing in a guy as good as Yumpy and not putting him in his best role. Let me just start there. And I also believe Allu has actually played as a rifler before in FaZe, for an example, and he did good. Like he didn't do bad. I don't know. I'm questioning it a lot. Of course, they talk about like we double up more and so on, and obviously, while that's true, I don't think that's not your main base to stand on. You know, you usually have one op. Then you, in some certain circumstances, you will have two. So I'm not that big of a fan, honestly. I don't see this as a very good change for ends. Also, obviously, there's the question about Yumpy not being able to play in Valve tournaments, which is strange. So, as much as I'm excited to see how this goes, I am calling it right now that it's not gonna save ends or anything. I don't think so.
So here's my 15 cents. First of all, Twista said in an interview that they will play differently depending whether they're playing with X7 or Yumpy. Now, first of all, if you want to be a world-class team, you can't be really changing your fundamentals depending on one player, because then you're mixing up your pack all the time. Secondly,
Yep.
replacing X7 with Jumpy as a rifler makes no sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I as much because you know that I am a biased Finn and I love to see Finnish teams perform, but it's really hard for me to get my head around this.
Well, I mean, I can understand it because if you have the opportunity to get a player as good as Jumpy and especially, as promising as he is, you probably want to take that opportunity, and I understand that. But all the circumstances around it are strange. I
Yeah.
agree with that. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Also, I really believe at some point X7 has been like a scapegoat basically here. He gets a lot of blame, and always when people talk about replacing someone, it's X7 every single
But
time, and
I
I
don't, I
really
don't,
think
I don't think it's X7. I don't.
me
It's not
neither.
him.
I'm not saying it's any other guy either, like specific, like it's him or he's the problem. I just feel like it's easy to always go for X7. I don't think Ariel's been good. Sunny hasn't been good either. The only player I actually feel is performing is Alu, but he might fucking be the problem. So I don't know. It's very tricky. I just feel like it's so easy to blame X7 because his stats might be a little bit worse, but they are not significantly worse than some of the other players, honestly.
And the thing is that X7 is the guy who, like, he's the one sitting alone on sites. He's the one that, he might clutch against simple one-on-one with no reactions, and then he loses 15 rounds in a row without getting kills because he just gets fucked over because he's alone on site. But the role that he's playing, like, he's he's the what you call support player or whatnot. Obviously we're talking about way too long about this, but either way, I still like I love to talk about this. Um, because Sunny should be kind of the leading right, like Sunny should be the leading firepower of the team. He is not that. Ariel should be a really good, like, high level rifle. He is not doing that. Sergey has lost his consistency completely. The young gun we once knew hasn't been himself in ages. Allu is we've been talking about this many times. Allu is the only player in the team who's been able to be consistent and on his level. And everybody else is underperforming. And replacing the support player who has been filling his shoes relatively okay gets replaced with a young, promising AWPer that won't be playing an AWP. It's all over the fucking place, man.
Yeah, but it's ends. So at this point, we don't expect much else than all over the place. So hey.
Yes. And ENS versus Fnatic. Let's fucking go.
Yeah, so this is obviously the next game on the list here, and this is kind of the same situation as the first one, honestly. Uh, Fnatic is a massive favorite. I've seen. Hang on, before I say something stupid, but I think they're like about the same, like 1.15, 1.2 around there.
1.2,
And
1.3 between that.
yeah, so this is tough. I don't know exactly how to put it, but I do believe that Fnatic has shown that they are really strong. Of course, they won ESL Pro League, amazing. But the thing is, as much as they've been good, they've been win the last 14 series. They won 11 of them. That's good, but in almost all of these, they dropped one map. It's very close. It's very few times that Fnatic has been going 2-0 in this series. And also, I'm not sure why this happens, but they always start really slow. Like they have been losing the first map of the day so many times, and there is just something there. And ends on the other hand, they won against NIP in the last game of ESL Pro League, but that was their first win in 10 series. So it's tough to say that ENS should have a chance to win here. But they did take maps of Vitality, Astralis, Godsent. I mean, that's good. It's very good signs for ENS. It's just that they can't freaking win, They can't close it out ever. So I think the odds are pretty fine here. I just believe, you don't even get double money for Fnatic 2-0, and I'm leaning more towards playing that ENCE would win one map, if anything. What do you think? Like, this is a confusing series to me, actually.
If I'm being completely honest, for me, this game from the EU ESL is being the only kind of clear one. I don't see any other result but 2-0 for Fnatic here. Like
Okay.
that's kind of my starting point. And from there, when you start looking at possible betting options, I find it really hard. I was trying to look for over underlines when it comes to player like kill amounts, but I
Yeah.
couldn't really get my head around it. I'm kind of leaning towards this. Why did I closed my tab, betting tab open? I was on Bet365 looking at the player over underlines when it comes to kills and JW.
They don't have them, but Pinnacle has
Oh,
player
Pinnacle.
lines.
Sorry. Yeah.
All
And
right.
the
So
JW line, will let me get it open here. But please continue talking. I know you have something to
uh,
say here.
yeah, I do. So the thing is, I do see this as a fairly, one-sided game. There's no doubt that Fnatic should win, but I really think the combination of Fnatic usually starting slow, they drop maps almost every series, ends, however, wins, one map very, very often against tier one teams. This is not like, against bad teams. Ents have taken maps of, like I said, Vitality, Astralis, and well, okay, Godsend. That's not the biggest win in the world, but it's still. So I think since map one will be picked by Ents, I'm fairly sure we'll see Inferno or Train. And the interesting part here is that they are actually quite good on those maps. Like they really are. I don't give Ents much credit. I've been hating on Ents a lot, but they are actually pretty good on Inferno and Train. So the first map is their pick. That's the important part. So you can get 3 times the money for them winning the map. I think that's like it's tough. I don't really believe they will win the first map, but 3 times the money is actually good if it ends up on one of those two maps, which it should. Uh, I think it could be better maybe to go for a handicap bet. You can probably get something like plus 4.5 on ends and get pretty close to double money. But I do have one bet that interests me a lot here, and that's Sergey going over 16.5 kills. I think since they're going to play one of the stronger maps, and I believe they are going to get a lot of rounds, they could possibly win the map. That means Sergey is one of the players that usually gets a lot of frags. He usually does on Inferno. CT sides, he's always doing good. So 16.5 is a line that's actually really low. Usually Sergey's lines are around 18 or 19, and now we have 16. That's really low. And you can get 1.81 for that. And I also want to mention 10 out of the 12 last times Sergey did beat that line quite easily. He's been a lot of times, he's been a lot, over 20, 22 frags. I actually like this bet a lot because I'm fairly certain Ents will at least get a lot of rounds in the first map. The second one, they might get smashed. The third one, they might get smashed. But on their own map pick, I'm fairly certain they will do fine.
This is one of those things why I was looking at JW. His line is at 19.5, and if it's Inferno, that's JW's playground. If ENCE gets, let's say that even if ENCE loses Inferno, and it's 16-13 or whatnot, there's a lot of rounds to be played, and JW with an AWP in Inferno, we've seen what he can do. Same thing with Train. He knows how to create space on those maps, and when it comes to his AWP, and if he's feeling good, I mean, that's a line he can beat. 2.2 times the money I find it good.
I see where you're coming from. I checked through every player before we started here. So What struck me though, because JW had a really good period for a while, he was popping off all the time, but I have a feeling he has not really been doing that as much, the last week or two in ESL Pro League. And one of the reasons I personally, the 2.2 odds is actually like it's really high, but it's because the line is really high. They could have set it at like 17.5 and be like 1.6 or whatever. I feel like Fnatic has too many players who takes up space at times. Like Brolan gets a lot of kills, Krims usually does, Flusha's there. Like, there's usually not that much space for JW to pick up that many frags. Of course, it happens. Like, this is very, player kills are usually hard lines to predict because a player
Yeah.
can easily go 10 kills or 35. It happens. But I don't disagree with the JW line, especially for the first map. Look, this is really important to understand. I think all players will get quite a few frags on map 1 because map 1 will be a close one. I don't think map 2 will be close. That's the thing. I don't think JW will beat this line on their map pick because they will win too fast. So I don't think that's terrible. I just have a hard time with JW because quite often he doesn't need to frag that much, or he doesn't. Like, if you could look at his history, he hasn't been over 20 frags for about 10, 11 maps, and that's a lot. Granted, a lot of these games have been very short ones, like 16 ones and 16 sevens, but I prefer the Sergey line, actually, because it's, 16.5 is way lower than 19.5. It makes a huge difference here.
All right. I mean,
But yeah, let's see.
I'll buy that. But either way, it was a good discussion, nevertheless, about it. And well, we are wait to see the
Well,
results, so to speak. But if
Sure. Let me just end with this. I think, looking at this game from a betting perspective, we agree that, looking at a series winner is not very interesting. The odds are probably pretty correct. Fnatic is a big favorite. They should be a big favorite. But for me, by far, the most interesting part here is map 1, because that's Ence's pick. And I don't mind, a bet on total rounds, handicap on ends, or player kills either, because this map is very good in that sense, because Fnatic's history of map 1s being bad and dropping maps very often, and likewise ends are usually winning a map here and there. So that's what makes this all interesting, and that's why we can talk about it for 10 minutes.
yeah. Then the next game on the menu, which might be the tightest from EU today, is Team Vitality going against Ninjas in Pyjamas.
Might be. This is by far the closest one. Let's be real here.
Let's be real.
Yeah. So this is a very close series, I think. Or I changed my mind. It's close, but I do give Vitality quite a big edge, actually. But that's also, most of the odds are around 1.7 for Vitality, and therefore like 2.2 on NIP. I think that's pretty close to reality. I personally probably think that Vitality should maybe be slightly below that, like 1.6 or so. Last time they played, Vitality did win 2-0, and this was in ESL Pro League about a month ago. It was 16-14 on Vertigo and 16-9 on Nuke. With that said, that was fairly close, and both of these teams performed quite similarly, really, and they both went through the group, but they didn't manage to get to phase 2 because they played whatever in between games there, and they both lost. I think it was against OG and Fnatic. So I still favor Vitality slightly, but I don't think there's anything really to be said about the odds for the series.
Yeah, the odds for winner seemed quite dull or boring, even.
Yeah.
So again, it comes down to the player lines or over under. I think it's a 3. Like, did you find odds for So we get 3 maps over 2.5.
I think everybody has them pretty much.
Yeah, but was there
Can check, but
any good on it? Because that might be
nah.
nah.
I don't think so. The odds were around, pretty much like 2.0 or slightly below, I think is.
Where is over
And
under?
for me, that's not very interesting, to be. Because I really think, this can easily go. Like, realistically, it can go 2-0 either way because of map pools. But I think, with that said, the most interesting bet I found was a player bet, like you were talking about. And this is kind of because I do favor Vitality, and I think if any team has the ability to crush the other one, it's Vitality. Because when they have a good day, they are amazing. You have to remember that. Like, some part of the time, they will crush an IP on certain maps. And especially, I think it's a big plus for Vitality that they have more time with Misuta now. And because they've already been looking fairly good with a new player, and
But
I think now when they have some more time, I think they can really start popping.
honestly, though, when you think of how Misota performed in EPL,
Sure.
it was not even fairly good. He
Yes, but
wasn't
that's the
there.
point. That's actually the point. Because if he can do fairly good now, then Vitality is going to be already really good. They already did fine. They almost moved on to phase 2, and phase 2 had like 6 of the best teams in the world.
Mm.
And I think that's fairly okay, if they can improve that. Because, like you said, Misuta was fucking terrible, That's the. And I'm sure he's not going to be fucking terrible forever.
But
So.
for whatever reason, because like on Pinnacle, for example, the over 2.5 maps is 1.9.
Yeah.
I see this going to 3 maps. I think because like the fact that the odds are so, even though it's of course it's Vitality favored, but it's not that heavily favored. I think it's quite safe almost to say that we will see 3 maps.
Okay, it's definitely not safe. Let me begin there.
Okay,
But
it's not safe, but I like that line. I think it's set on a good place.
yeah, no, I think it should be around that number. Definitely. I think. I know it's hard for me because I know NIP. They are really they like Vertigo. They have been playing a lot of Vertigo lately. They have a Inferno, but that's also a good map for Vitality. It's very likely will end up on Vertigo. Maybe Overpass? How's Overpass for? Yeah,
Vitality
is that the?
3 maps in last 3 months, 33% win rate. So they won 1 out of 3.
Yeah, but that was against Astralis though, and they lost one against Astralis as well. I don't know. I really believe it's quite likely that Vitality could 2-0 this just because of map pool issues with NIP and Vitality being basically good or at least decent on all the maps NIP could pick, which should be like Overpass, Vertigo, Inferno. And all of those are decent as far as I know for Vitality. Let me put it like this. I don't think it's a terrible bet. I just think that the line is correctly set.
Alright. So
my bet though,
yeah.
since I didn't mention what I actually chose here as the best, I went with a res actually being under 17.5 kills in both or all 3 maps. And this was weird to me because in the past I would have said res is their best player. And lately, not so much. He has been pretty bad, actually. He's been under 17 kills, 9 out of the 10 last maps. And you have to keep in mind that NIP has been doing fairly well as a team, and they have played quite a few close games in there. So Res has definitely not been on his best, because before he would have been, at least half a year ago, he was the best player on NIP, And now he's not, and I really think that there's a possibility, and this is important. This is something that people who are not into betting have to kind of understand. If Vitality has a good day, they can crush NIP, and then Res will be under these lines. It might not happen, but this is betting, and that's why, from my perspective, Vitality can crush NIP, but NIP can't really crush Vitality. I don't think that's as likely, and that's really important for this bet, that there is a chance for, Vitality crushing NIP.
Yeah.
And I like this a lot, actually. I think this is a really good bet because the odds are 1.93. That's almost double money, and Res has been under this line constantly, and he was last time they played as well. And this is going up on the betting Twitter, that's for sure. I think I will tweet out most of the things that I'm mentioning today, but I want to add in that usually we are quite picky with our bets and our betting tips because that's how we like it, and that's why we have good results. What we are discussing here is finding something for every game. Hence, that means that these bets are not as good on average as they usually are. Like, that's the truth. I still think there's value to be had, but they are just, significantly less.
All right. Enough of EU.
Yeah, I think so. I think we had actually, like, I kind of like most of the bets we have discussed here. More than, sometimes it's really hard to find anything to bet on. Like, sometimes we have days without a good bet on our betting Twitter because we simply cannot find anything. But I think almost in every game here, I think there's very, very good reasoning for what we have discussed, like the ends game, the complexity. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on.
All
So
right.
we can move on to NA with that said.
Yes. And we are going to start our NA action with Triumph going against Cloud9. First of all, I want to be completely honest. I said this
Sure.
yesterday, and I'm gonna say it today. And this Triumph lineup is, I have no idea who they are.
Sure, that's fine. I mean, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I have seen them play like maybe 4 or 5 series or so during the spring, so I have some insight, but not very.
Yeah, and let's take a look at who Triumph have been playing against. They played ESEAMDL Season 33 North America, and the teams they're playing against are from Tier 2, Tier 3.
Yep.
They've been in some DreamHack qualifiers. Yeah, it's...
I mean, they obviously don't play, the top teams of the world. Like, that's we don't even have to discuss that. But
Yeah.
I do think that there's a few things that stick out here. And if I went further back, here it is actually. I remember one of the first games I saw with Triumph, and that was when they played Orgless or Hopeless or Worthless, whatever. But they won that. They won 2-1 against Orgless, and that's good. That's a good result, I think. Then after that, they have played, like you said, a lot of teams that are quite unknown teams. But I think it's interesting that at one point they did beat Chaos twice, once in a best of 1, once in a best of 3. I mean, Chaos is not the best team either, but it's something. It shows that they are, they can compete with, say, the bottom half of Flashpoint. And Flashpoint is a good, is good to compare to because Cloud9 ended up being 4th in Flashpoint, and they did well. There's no doubt about it. Cloud9, it was clear that they were like the 4th best team. There was the top teams, and then there were the rest. So Cloud9 is definitely a favorite here. There's absolutely no discussion. I do, however, think that the 1.2, which seems to be about the average, I personally don't think they deserve being a 1.2 favorite. I really don't. Even though Triumph is obviously, a lower tier team, but they have also shown that they can upset some teams as well. I don't know. I don't like the 1.2 line at all for Cloud9, even if I favor them.
Yeah, it's way too low. I mean, we are looking at similar lines than Astralis is getting against Complexity, and that matchup is significantly tighter than this one. Like,
Yeah,
even
it should
though
be.
Triumph is an underdog, But it's not like Cloud9 is a team that's going to wash them out 2-0 with the 16-2 and 16-4 wins.
No, definitely not. I was looking a little bit about or the odds for Triumph to win one map, and they are about double money, which I think it could be okay, but I really don't feel like it's good enough for me to recommend people to bet on it. I do, however, I think looking at some of the handicap lines or total rounds and stuff like that, I think there could be some good plays there. I think this is not going to be an easy win for Cloud9, especially not in 2 straight maps. It might easily go to 3, but the maps they play should be kind of close. I don't think Cloud9 has impressed me enough, in Flashpoint. They don't really smash teams. They grind out wins, but it's usually fairly close.
Mm.
That's at least how I've seen it. Even though their results are pretty good, to be fair, in Flashpoint against teams. Let's see, what did they play when they won? Like Copenhagen Flames, Gen G, Warglass. But most of those wins are fairly tight. A lot of those actually went to overtimes. But then again, it's hard to compare because teams like Gen G or Copenhagen Flames are better than Triumph. So it gets tough. It gets tough. But I do think that Triumph has a fighting chance. And for example, playing on like over 24 rounds, which means again 16-9. Yeah, had to do some math, quick math. 16-9. Like 9 rounds for Triumph. I think they should manage that on almost any map. Of course, one of them might end in a wash or whatever, but I kind of like it. I think you could definitely play on over rounds on both maps. If anything, I would rather do that than the other option.
All right. Should we then look at the next game of the day?
Sure, hit me up.
We have Gen G going against the 100 Thieves. And 100 Thieves is going in as the favorite with 1.4, 1.5 odds, and Gen G you can get from 2.2 to 2.6 times the money.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin with this one. If I'm gonna be honest. I think 100 Thieves has been so up and down for me. I've seen them play decent games. They won against Evil Geniuses. I remember that being pretty good, but I thought EG kind of played shit that game. Then they lost 3 straight games in ESL Pro League to follow that up against Liquid, MIBR Furia. But those 3 teams are still good, In the level of competition we're looking at here, I think you can call Furia, MIBR, and Liquid all good teams. They are probably better teams than Gen G, with that said. So I do not know, because I don't think the 1.5 is anywhere close for me to actually bet on 100 Thieves. But if I say that, it should mean that it's worth playing on the opponent. However, I am not sure I feel that way. This is a really weird game for me. I don't know. This is basically the two of the teams that I feel the most insecure about. I don't really know what I should do with them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Say something.
This is like one of the harder games to judge, probably. I mean, looking at the player lines, the player lines are not even up.
They don't have them for NA. I think it's only the EU games that has them.
Yeah,
actually.
that makes it even worse because.
Well, if anything, I guess I feel quite confident that this will be closer than the odds suggest. Like, the odds suggest that 100 Thieves is a massive favorite. Like, 1.4 is a massive favorite, or 1.5 on some sites. I once again, there could be some opportunities. I haven't looked at this well enough or enough. There could be some good opportunities on Gen G's map pick. If you can get pretty good handicaps on it, then I feel maybe there's something. But just in general, I would probably avoid this game personally. I really don't feel strongly either way, and that's mostly because of 100 Thieves' inconsistency. But they are still, even if they're inconsistent, they are still on paper a stronger team than Gen G, and that makes these odds kind of not great either way, I feel.
Okay, question. Total maps over 2.5, you can get 2 times the money at Pinnacle.
Hell no.
Well, that's settled then.
It's no. I think if I got like 2.3, 2.4 for sure, definitely I would go for it. But this is not good enough. I don't feel like double money. I can't put a logical explanation why double money would be good here. I really can't, because if 100 Thieves plays up to their level, they really should 2-0 Gen G. Gen G hasn't shown enough to suggest that they should have a chance here. It's basically coming down to 100 Thieves sucking balls, if that's gonna happen. I don't like it, but I don't like anything. And this is also kind of important. I don't really want to give a betting tip for every single game, because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You can't find good betting tips on every single game, and this to me feels like one of those.
Actually, funny thing, looking at the map statistics, this isn't betting, but Gen G has better results from all maps except Vertigo. Neither of the teams are playing Overpass. Gen G has higher win rate on all maps except Vertigo.
That is because Gen G plays against tier 2 and 3 teams, and 100 Thieves plays against almost exclusively tier 1 teams.
Yeah. True.
I wouldn't take much out of it, but
it's a fun statistic.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of, we talked about Gen G like a long time ago, about at least a month, maybe 2, and I believe in this team. I still believe they can be pretty good, but they just haven't shown enough lately. They have some pretty good skill, but
yeah,
no, not.
All right, then it's the last NA game of today, which is going to be between Evil Geniuses and Worthless.
The endless bashing continues.
I mean, what can you do? What can you say? You have Evil Geniuses, top 10 team who has the potential to be even the best, and then you have Orgless.
Yeah, I mean, it is so hard to find any kind of logic for why Orgless, Worthless, whatever. How would they have a chance here? I can't find it. I just can't. But like looking at the odds, it's basically like 1.1, 1.15. No, thank you. But then again, like minus 1.5 for EG is like 1.5, 1.6. I don't think that's good enough either, because I really believe that Orgless, as much as we are bashing them, they actually are pretty decent, and they have taken maps of quite strong teams, honestly, like MIBR, Cloud9. They won against Chaos. They took a map of Dignitas. Okay, that's not great. I'm not gonna make it sound like that's some accomplishment, but I still
Dignitas
don't trust
with Guardian, actually.
Yeah, sure. But the thing is this, and this is really important. I just don't trust EG. I don't. They are up and down. I love EG. I think they're one of the most skilled teams in the world. I think they can win any tournament on a given day. They can. They are so amazingly skilled. I love their players. When Cirque and Breeze especially are playing like they should, they are amazing. And there's a possibility, high possibility, that they will 2-0 Orgless like they should, but 1.5 or 1.6 does not sound attractive at all to me. But I also can't motivate how you can play for Orgless to win a map. I can't see it either way. I'm sorry, but this is... No.
Well...
Tell me something smart, Temo, because I can't say anything smart.
Well, if we are being honest, there's not much to be added here. Like you said earlier, it doesn't even make sense to try give betting tips for all games. And
That's true, but I
in
think, okay, maybe. I found something that I think is quite interesting. I can see myself playing EG minus 4.5 to 1.8. I think that's pretty good. EG winning 16-11, both maps or better. Yeah, I think that's decent though. I don't trust them fully, but it's quite likely that they do manage to win 2 maps quite convincingly. Is it enough? 1.8 is kind of on the line. I don't know. If it was like 1.9, and this is the thing, it's small differences, but really, if it was 1.9 or better, I would definitely recommend it. But 1.8 is like, it's exactly on the low side. Fuck, it's tough. Sorry.
yeah.
But okay, to highlight something interesting about this game, though, looking at the odds. So I'm talking about the handicap lines on the maps.
Yeah.
And if you look at Pinnacle, if you play minus 5.5, you get over double the money. The same line on Bet365, you get 1.8, 1.83.
I actually have Pinnacle
That's-
open at the moment here on stream.
Yeah, it's a massive difference on the lines, the handicap betting on these two. And I'm sure looking at Pinnacle being over 2 for EG winning 16-10 or better, I'm sure you can find maybe some website who has even a little bit better than. And then I definitely think if you can go like 2.1, that's really, really good. Like, that's amazing, actually.
Minus
Wait, now I wanna check.
5.5. Minus 5.5 for EG on map 1 and 2.1 odds.
Yeah, I think that would be really good.
Where
I
did you
would take
find
it for
that?
both. Pinnacle.
On map 1?
They have, yeah, minus 5.5 is 206.
206, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good because anything over double the money on that line, I would take, and I would take it for both maps. I don't care which map they play. I think they are very likely to win them. And I'm looking at it like this, right? So if we put in a bet for both maps about the same line, I'm sure, or sure, I don't want to make it sound like it's sure. It's never sure. It's betting, but they will, or EG will definitely win one map convincingly. And if you get more than double the money, well, you win one, you lose one, you still made money, right? So
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. I think that's definitely worth it. No discussion. I'm really curious to check some other sites, though. Well, CoolBet is kind of in line, but they have 4.5 minus 4.5, and you get 1.8. I think that's pretty reasonable too. Then you have one more round to play around with.
Alright, so we found something out of this. Is there something you would like to add? Sorry, I'm yawning.
Yeah, sounds like you need some sleep.
No, I just need another coffee. And maybe
I like the sound of that.
maybe a drink that gives me wings without doing any more advertising over here.
Yeah. Okay, no, I don't really have anything to add. I think this was very productive since I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna tweet out a few betting tips. We have been pretty active over the last week, and we actually done really well. Despite losing this morning, we had a losing bet. We do those too. We don't lie about them, so there it is. I will probably tweet out about 3. Maybe I would choose actually my 2 favorite bets out of everything we have discussed today and tweet them out before these games start. The EU games start in 2 hours, so we still have some time, and well, hopefully we get the betting tips out and the bets in before the lines change, because apparently these betting companies, they are watching us, and every time we say something, they annihilate the odds. So, you know.
So, yeah. I think this is it then. I can kind of
It is.
I linking our Twitter, betting Twitter to the chat, and
Yeah.
staring at some
Also,
odds. Yeah.
just to mention about the betting Twitter, I am working on a way so people can check our results consistently. Right now, the best we can do is basically tweet out a summary of like a month or how we are doing. I'm working on a way to, make sure that people can access all of our bets, all of our history, and so on, whenever they want, and then people can also go through and check our tweets and follow and check, so we are being honest about it. And we are, sometimes we go on losing streaks, we are only human, but we are working on a way to make it more accessible and easier to see overall how we are doing. But that's about it for me. I hope we can improve what we are doing, and if anybody has any opinions on the betting Twitter or anything else, of course we are more than open to listen. And if you want to bash us for losing a bet every now and then, that's fine too. Go ahead.
And with that said, it's time to say thank you, Janne. Again, it's always
Thank you.
fun to listen to you talk about betting because you know so much more than I do. So I'm actually learning every day, and I hope
Well,
that
I would say like this.
yeah.
It's fun to talk about it, but when it's been an hour, I feel like I'm just repeating myself, and it gets a little bit, we talk around in a circle eventually, but it's always really fun, and I definitely like looking at the betting angle in general for games. So that makes it fun, and I hope we can do more of these in the future.
Yeah, and I'll just show people here. So this is our betting Twitter account, and as you can see, we are somewhat active in here. So if you are interested in esports betting, highly recommend following this. The tips that we're giving out are free, and they always will be free. We don't have any private groups or whatnot. Everything is out there in the open, and we try to always give some background knowledge to every single betting tip we're offering. And as you can see now, what we were speaking about during today's stream, it's actually quite a lot of background work that goes to giving out these tips. So appreciate them.
Well, it's also just to add, as much as we have been talking today, obviously I was a little bit prepared. And usually, if I say a sentence, like this player has these stats, it still meant that I'd spent like 5 minutes checking through all of his stats and, watching like every single game that they have ever played. The background work is obviously one thing, but then following everything so you actually have like a better opinion than just stats as well is. It's time consuming, it really is.
And now, before we end this broadcast, I want to show you that we also have this amazing video content on our betting Twitter. So please, Janne, shut up for a bit.
Okay.
It's loading. It's probably starting soon. Now we go.
Some high quality editing.
Yeah, I don't know who did this, but it's amazing.
Well, we're working on improving, to say the least. But maybe it's better to keep it this way. At least it's honest, and it doesn't take me hours.
This is
I can't
also
spend
really
all day
nice.
making videos. I don't get paid to make videos, so we have to keep them short.
I love that we have the sex god Dosha in every single video you've done so far.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you make a video without Dosha. It's not gonna happen, right?
Well,
so
you just leave him out.
Look, I might tone it down a bit and just put him like in a small, at the somewhere. He's gonna be hidden in every video, just so you know. But it will be subtle. Right now it's a bit much.
All right. And with that said, it's time to say thank you for watching, and we will be back tomorrow with some more esports action. With that said,
Sounds very good.
Have a great afternoon, people. Pew pew. See you tomorrow. Ciao ciao.
See you tomorrow, and check out the Twitter.